Good morning, children. I am Mrs. B. Yunus Ramola. Once again, I welcome you all to the English class. In the previous class, we were seeing about the lesson Summit. So, it deals with Mount Everest. Ice covered mountains or peaks, they are called as glaciers, and the mass of snow or ice falling rapidly down a mountain is called avalanche. So, this is the fourth unit in the English book, The Summit. It is written by Edmund Hillary. So Hillary, along with five of his team, they traveled to Mount Everest. And climbing a mountain, a person who climbs a mountain is called a mountaineer. So Edmund Hillary, Tenzing, George Lovey, Alfred Gregory, and two Sherpas. Sherpas, the tribals of Nepal, that is Pemba and Angnima, they were along with Hillary. Yes? Okay. Now, they crossed 27,900 feet, and from there, Hillary and Tenzing, they started their journey. They made a tent, and what did they do? That night, they slept in the sleeping bag. Yes, this is called sleeping bag, which is a very warm bag made of a material which can withstand chillness. They were wearing very warm clothes. Yes, on May 28th, this happened. The next morning, on May 29th, at 4 a.m., they started their journey. Here, I am repeatedly telling you about ridge. Ridge means chain of mountains, chain of hills or mountains. We'll be coming across this term many times in this lesson, and col is the lowest point of the ridge. Okay, they started their journey taking a large quantity of lemon juice and sugar, sardine. Sardine is a kind of fish, it is preserved in the tin, and biscuits. Then they checked on the oxygen cylinder whether it is working or not. Then what did they do? They have left their boots outside the tent, and it has become so frozen. So they cooked it on the primus. Primus means a stove. Then they wore 3 pairs of gloves, silk, woolen, and windproof. So at 6:30 they crawled out of the tent. At 4 they got up. Then they had lemonade with sugar, then sardine, a tin of sardine, and few biscuits. At 6:30 they started their journey, hoisting their 30 lb. lb is pound of oxygen a cylinder, and they moved off towards Everest. So this Hilary was feeling a bit chill. So he was not able to travel very fast. So he asked Tenzing to move forward, to take the lead. See here, these are the boots they were wearing, and the spike-like things, it is called as crampon. The spike-like things are called as crampon. Yes, as they travel few hundred meters, they happen to find two oxygen bottles left somewhere there on the way. So they understood that it was left by Evans and Baudelaire. Evans and Baudelaire. Yes, the mountaineers who traveled before them, but they were not able to reach Everest. Maybe they returned half the way, unable to withstand the cool climate. Yes, and somehow these two, they tried their best to move forward with great difficulty. As they were going higher and higher, there was a difficulty in breathing. They felt difficult to breathe, but somehow they continued their journey. At one point of time, nearly 10 lb of oxygen was exhausted. They changed their cylinders, oxygen cylinders. Now it was 20 lb, somewhat lighter than the previous journey. So this is the last slide which we saw in the previous class. Yes, okay. and this is the axe through which they used to cut the ice. So in the first phase of their journey, they were coming across soft snow. When they happened to keep their legs on the snow, it gave way. அது என்ன பண்ணுச்சு, வழி விட்டுச்சு. அப்படின்னா என்ன அர்த்தம், அந்த ஸ்னோ அப்படியே ஒதுங்கிருச்சு. they were pulled in, their foot were uh, pulled in. They were not able to remove their foot from the ice. Yes, but as they move forward towards the peak, the ice becomes very rigid, very strong. Now, they feel quite comfortable, but still they have to make way to move to the summit. Yes, summit is the highest point. So we come across a new word called cornice. Cornice means the overhanging mass of snow or ice along a ridge. Ridge is a chain of mountains or hills shaped like the curling crest of wave. Alaya and the ice form ஆயிருக்கு. Then we come across the term calm, CWM, an enclosed armchair shaped hollow situated at the head of the valley. So they were crossing all these things, and at one point they used ropes to just make their climbing easier. Somehow they were at a point below them. It was 8,000 feet below them. So they were standing there and they looked below and they were so shocked, surprised, of course happy to see 8,000 feet below us the tiny tents of Camp 4. Since they were so standing in a very highest point, the tents below seemed very tiny. Tiny means very small. Yes. Now we'll move on to the new slide. On its east side was another great cornice. So, what is a cornice? I just want you to remember cornice is overhanging mass of snow or ice along the ridge shape like curling crest of wave. Cornice means overhanging mass of snow. நான் போன கிளாஸ்லேயே உங்களுக்கு சொன்ன ஞாபகம் எனக்கு, ஐஸ் வந்து குச்சி குச்சியாக நம்ம ஃப்ரீசரை திறந்த ரொம்ப நாள் நம்ம ஃப்ரீசரை டீஃப்ராஸ்ட் பண்ணாமல் இருந்தால் ஐஸ் எல்லாம் குச்சி குச்சியாக ஃபார்ம் ஆகுது இல்லையா, தட் இஸ் கால்ட் cornice. So what is a cornice? It is overhanging mass of snow. Here on its east side were another great cornice, and running up the full 40 feet of the step was a narrow crack between the cornice and the rock. So there were sharp eyes hanging, and it was very difficult for them to move forward because it may pierce their body. They may be they are in a danger. Anything may happen to them between the cornice and the rock. Leaving Tenzing to belay me as best he could, I jammed my way into this crack. Crack means between the cornice and the rock there was a trail. Na ottadi padan sonne. Somehow these two were moving upward. Then kicking backwards, I sank the spikes of my crampons. Spikes of my crampons. Crampons என்னன்னு சொன்னேன், அந்த ஷூக்கு கீழே இருக்கிறது ஸ்பைக்ஸ். இங்கே ஐஸில் இருக்கிறதுக்கு பேர் crampons சொல்கிறாங்க. Deep into the frozen snow behind me and levered myself off the ground. Taking advantage of every little rock hold and all the force of knee, shoulder and arms I could muster, I literally cramponed backwards up the crack, praying that the cornice would remain attached to the rock. எவ்வளோ பயம் இருக்கும் இல்லையா? So he was moving he was crawling with his knees and arms. He was crawling. So at each and every step he was praying that the cornice should remain attached to the rock. If the cornice just leaves away the rock, there will be an avalanche. Avalanche என்றது நான் first few slides-லே பார்த்தோம். Avalanche is the rapid flow of the melting of snow or ice from the mountains. So there should not be anything happening because we have reached such a great height, and I just pray that the cornice should remain attached to the rock. My progress, although slow, was steady. So they were steadily, with great confidence and prayers, they were moving forward. As Tenzing paid out the rope, I inched my way upwards until I could reach over the top of the rock. and dragged myself out of the crack on the wide ledge. Somehow I was moving, cracking on the ledge, the path. Somehow I was moving along the trail. For a few moments I lay regaining my breath, and for the first time really felt the fierce determination that nothing now could stop us reaching the top. So they have reached to a certain point when they got really confident of reaching the summit. ஏன்னா நிறைய பேர் வந்து ட்ரை பண்ணாங்க, but they were not able to reach the summit. But this Hilary and Tenzing, with their fierce determination, strong mind to reach their goal, they had a fierce determination. This is what is essential for each and every one of you. Fierce determination. If you have an ambition, if you have a goal, you must have that fierce determination to reach that. So I lay regaining my breath, and for the first time really felt the fierce determination that nothing now could stop us reaching the top. So nothing could stop us. We are about to reach the summit, and nothing could stop us. They were having strong determination, willpower, strong mind. I took a firm stance on the ledge and signaled to Tenzing to come on up. As I heaved hard on the rope, giving a deep breath, Tenzing wriggled his way up the crack and finally collapsed at the top like a giant fish when it has just been hauled from the sea after a terrible struggle. Hauled means caught. Yes, somehow Tenzing, Hilary was on the lead, and Tenzing followed. He was so exhausted on reaching up. Tenzing wriggled to move, twist and turn his way up the crack, and finally collapsed at the top like a giant fish when it has just been hauled from the sea after a terrible struggle. The ridge continued as before. ஸோ நம்ம வந்து சேர்ந்துட்டோம் அப்படின்னு அவர் மனசுல நினைக்கிற சமயத்துல என்ன ஆகுது? The ridge continued as before. Ridge is chain of mountains. Again there was a chain of mountains. So they have not reached the summit so far. There was again a chain of mountains. Giant cornices and the icicle circle. Yeah, giant cornices, very big in shape on the right. Steep rocks sloped on the left. See the dangers they faced on their mountaineering. Yes, it is not that easy to climb Mount Everest. Yes, and see, one side there was a giant cornice, other side steep rock. The ridge curved away to the right, and we have no idea where the top was. So strong determinationல போய்கிட்டு இருக்காங்க. மனசுக்குள்ள ஒரே சந்தோஷம். At last we are about to reach it அப்படின்னு நினைக்கிறப்ப என்ன ஆகுது? இல்லை, இன்னும் நிறைய தூரம் இருக்கு நீங்க கடக்கிறது அப்படின்றதுக்கு அப்புறம் they find a ridge. அது எண்டுன்னு நினைச்சாங்க. அது என்ன ridge? What is a ridge? It is a chain of hills or mountains. They were not in a position to finalize where the top was. As I cut around the back of one hump, another higher one would swing into view. Time was passing and the ridge seemed never ending. சரி, இதை நம்ம முடிச்சிருவோம். இந்த ஹம்ப்ன்றது மேடு. இந்த மேடை முடிச்சுட்டா நம்ம எவரெஸ்ட் ரீச் ஆயிடலாம். இந்த ஹம்பை முடிச்சுட்டான்ட்டு ஒவ்வொரு இதாக அவங்க கடந்து போகிறாங்க. டைம் வாஸ் பாசிங் அண்ட் த ரிட்ஜ் சீம் நெவர் எண்டிங். ரிட்ஜ்ன்றது என்ன? செயின் ஆஃப் மவுண்டன்ஸ். அது முடிவே இல்லாமல் அது போய்கிட்டே இருக்கு. அவர் ஒரிஜினல் ஜெஸ்ட், எந்தூசியாசம் had now quite gone. அந்த ஆரம்பத்தில் அந்த அப்பா அப்படின்ற அந்த enthusiasm has now quite gone, and it was turning more into a grim struggle. So இந்த நம்ம ரொம்ப டயர்டாக போயிட்டு ரீச் ஆயிரும் அப்படின்னு நினைக்கிற நேரத்தில் தள்ளி போய்கிட்டே இருந்துச்சுன்னா நம்ம என்ன ஆகுது? நமக்குள்ளே தோணுது, நமக்குள்ளே இருக்க அந்த ஸ்பிரிட் குறைஞ்சிருது இல்லையா? ஸோ this is the same thing that happened to Hilary and Tenzing. It was turning more into a grim struggle. Then I realized that the ridge ahead, instead of rising, now dropped sharply away. So இவ்வளோ நேரம் பார்த்த ridge எல்லாம் it was rising above and above and above. But now the ridge stopped rising. Rather, it started to drop down. உயரமாக போய்கிட்டு இருந்த ரிட்ஜ் என்னாச்சு? இப்போ இறங்க ஆரம்பிச்சு. I look upwards to see a narrow snow ridge running up to a snowy summit. Summit is the highest point. A few more whacks of the ice wax in the firm snow, and we stood on the top. ஸோ ஐயோ திருப்பி ஒரு ரிட்ஜா, திருப்பி செயின் ஆஃப் மவுண்டன்ஸ் அண்ட் ஹில்ஸா அப்படின்னு நினைக்கிற சமயத்தில் ஒரு சம்மிட் இவங்க கண்ணுக்கு தெரியுது, ஹையஸ்ட் பாயிண்ட். அதுக்கு மேலே வேற ஒன்றுமே இல்லை. A few more whacks of the ice. Wax means beating the ice with their axe. They stood on the top. They have reached. My first feelings were of relief. Relief that there were no more steps to cut, no more ridges to traverse, and no more humps to tantalize us with the hope of success. அவர் அப்படியே அங்கே ரீச் ஆனோன்னா ஒரே ஒரு பெருமிதம், ஒரே சந்தோஷம், ரிலீஃப், ஒரு கம்ஃபர்ட். என்ன இனிமேலும் நம்ம மேலே ஏற வேண்டிய அவசியம் இல்லை. அந்த சம்மிட்டை வி ஹாவ் ரீச். நோ மோர் ரிட்ஜஸ் டு ட்ராவல்ஸ், ட்ராவல் பண்ணுறதுக்கு இன்னும் ரிட்ஜஸ் இல்லை. நோ மோர் ஹம்ஸ் டு டேண்டலைஸ். டேண்டலைஸ் மீன்ஸ் taunt us, means give us trouble, with the hopes of success. I looked at tensing in spite of the balaclava helmet. See, the image I have shown, this is the balaclava helmet. Balaclava helmet. In spite of the balaclava helmet. So they were wearing goggles. Goggles are spectacles and oxygen mask, all encrusted with long icicles. எல்லாத்துலையும் ஐஸ் படிஞ்சிருச்சு. That concealed his face. There was no disguising his grin of delight. Grin means happiness, smile, as he looked all around him. So first Hilary climbed, and next he asked Tennyson to climb up. Tennyson was in all smiles. He was so happy. We shook hands, and then Tennyson threw his arm around my shoulders, and we thumped each other on the back until we were almost breathless. So their hard task of climbing Mount Everest came to an end. They were the first to reach Mount Everest. They just patted on each other's shoulders. It was 11:30 a.m. The ridge had taken us 2.5 hours, but it seemed like a lifetime. Like a lifetime. 2 மணி நேரம் 11:30 a.m.லேருந்து தான் நாங்கள் ட்ராவல் ஆகி வந்திருக்கு. பட் ஸ்டில் it seemed to us a very long journey, the longest journey in our life. He felt so. To the east was our giant neighbor Makalu, unexplored and unclimbed. ஸோ எவரெஸ்ட் பக்கத்தில் இன்னொரு பீக் கூட இருக்கு. இட்ஸ் நேம் இஸ் மக்காலு, பட் இட் வாஸ் அன்எக்ஸ்ப்ளோர்ட் அண்ட் அன்கிளைம்ட். அதை யாருமே பொருட்படுத்தலை. ஏன்னா அந்த மக்காலுன்ற நேமை நமக்கு தெரியவே இல்லை. பார்த்தீங்களா, far away across the clouds, the great bulk of Kanchenjunga loomed on the horizon. To the west, we could see the great unexplored ranges of Nepal stretching off into the distance. So, on reaching Mount Everest, they happened to see everything around them, Kanchenjunga, Nepal, and all the places, the plains they were able to see. The most important photograph I felt was shot down the North Ridge, showing the North Pole and the old route which has been made famous by the struggles of those climbers of the 1920s and 1930s. So they went through South Pole. ஆரம்பத்துலேருந்தே சவுத் கோல் வழியாக தான் நம்ம போயிருக்கோம் இல்லையா, இவங்க 2 பேரும் போனாங்க. ஸோ on standing over there in the summit, they were able to see the North Pole and the trail which was used by the climbers during 1920s and 1930s. After 10 minutes, I realized that I was becoming rather clumsy figured and slow moving. So I quickly replaced my oxygen set. So I was becoming rather clumsy figured means there is a fatigue, a feeling of tiredness and a feeling of shortness of breath. I understood that I was in my happiness, I forgot to inhale the oxygen. So what I did, I immediately replaced my oxygen set. So immediately he just removed his oxygen set which has been exhausted, and he took on another oxygen cylinder. Meanwhile, Tenzing had made a little hole in the snow, and in it he placed various small articles of food. What are they? Bar of chocolate, a packet of biscuits, and a handful of lollies. Small offerings indeed, but at least a token gift to the gods that all devout Buddhists believe had their home on this lofty summit. So we all know that on one side is Nepal, one side is China, one side is Tibet. Yes, so all these people, many of them, they belong to the religion of Buddhism. So what do they believe is that the gods, they reside somewhere in the lofty summits, somewhere in the summits. இல்லையா கைலாசம் அப்படின்னு சொல்றோம். கைலாஷ், very famous word nowadays, is it not? கைலாஷ், இமயமலையில போய் அங்க நிறைய கேவ்ஸ் இருக்கும், அங்க முனிவர்கள்லாம் இருப்பாங்க. These are all the things which we have heard but we have not traveled. But here Hilary and Tenzing, what they did, Tenzing, what he did, after reaching the summit, he made a hole in the snow and he placed various articles of food like bar of chocolate, a packet of biscuits. இதெல்லாம் யாருக்காக? As a token of a token of gift to the gods, which the people, they believe that the gods are in the summit. While we were together on the South Pole 2 days before, Colonel Hunt, Colonel, Colonel, should not be pronounced as colonel, it has to be pronounced as Colonel Hunt, had given me a small crucifix. Crucifix is the image I am showing here. It is cross. It's a wooden cross where it is one can see that Christ has been crucified in the cross. This is called crucifix. So when they were in the South Pole 2 days before, Colonel Hunt had another person had given me, here me means Tenzing, a small crucifix which he had asked me to take to the top. I too made a hole in the snow and placed the crucifix besides Tenzing's gift. So who was carrying the crucifix? It is not Tenzing, it is Hilary. So Tenzing made a hole in the snow and kept all the eatables as a token of gift to the gods, because it is the belief of the Buddhists that the gods, they reside in the summit. Whereas Colonel Hunt, what did he give to Hilary? He gave a crucifix, and this person, Tenzing, along with Tenzing's gifts, Hilary placed this crucifix on the top of the summit, yes, on the Mount Everest. After 15 minutes, I moved down off the summit onto our steps. Wasting no time, we cramponed along our tracks. Crampon is climbing on ice wearing spike shoes. This is the crampon. Yeah, you see the image. We cramponed along our tracks, spurred by the urgency of diminishing oxygen. So they just went up, then they started to climb down immediately because of the urgency of diminishing of oxygen. Their oxygen cylinders were getting exhausted. We scrambled cautiously over the rock traverse, moved one at a time over shaky snow sections, and finally cramponed up our steps and back onto the south peak. We were now very tired, so they traveled, and they see, climbing up is difficult usually. Yes, it takes a long time, but climbing down is quite easy, but they have to be very careful because they mustn't lose their balance. When they go up, they'll be having a balance and somehow they can reach. But climbing down, there will be a pressure pushing them downwards very fast. So they were very careful. We were now very tired and moved down onto the two reserve cylinders on the ridge. As we were only a short distance from camp and had a few liters of oxygen left in our own bottles, we carried the extra cylinders down and reached our tent on its crazy platform at 2 p.m. They started their journey at 6:30 in the morning. By 2, they returned. Climbing was difficult, but getting down was easy. Somehow, they reached their tent. With a last look at the camp that had served us so well, we turned upwards with dragging feet and set ourselves to the task of safely descending the ridge to the south pole. So, from the tent, again we took the things which we have kept it in the tent, and we started our journey towards south pole from the place where they started. The time passed as in a dream. So as they were coming down, they felt as if it is a dream. அப்படியே ஒரு கனவு மாதிரி இருந்துச்சு. Reaching the summit, reaching the highest peak, they felt as if it was a dream. The time passed as in a dream. Two figures came towards us and met us a couple of 100 feet above the camp. They were George Lowe and Wilfred Noyes, laden with hot soup and emergency oxygen. ஸோ இவங்கள சவுத் கோல்க்கு இவங்க ரீச் ஆகிறதுக்கு முன்னாடி யார் க்ரீட் பண்ணுறா? ஜார்ஜ் லோவே அண்ட் வில்ஃப்ரெட் நாய்ஸ். And what were they having with them? Hot soup and emergency oxygen. Imagine, அப்படியே சில்லாக இருக்கிற இடத்துல அப்படியே they were frozen, nearly frozen. And how they would feel taking that hot soup. Yeah. Now, we don't feel so much chill, but during hot summer season, even now, the season, so at this juncture of September, we feel so hot. The climate is so sultry. What do we love to drink in the afternoon? Something very chill. Yes, is it not? And these people, they have climbed to the summit. They have been nearly frozen. And they were greeted with a hot soup by two friends, George Lowe and Wilfred Noyes. Yes, and emergency oxygen. Just short of the tent, my oxygen ran out. We had had enough to do the job, but by no means too much. So, exactly by just getting near the tent, his oxygen was over. Somehow, they reached the tent and they were out of danger. We crawled into the tent and with a sigh of delight collapsed into our sleeping bags while the tents flapped and shook under the perpetual south cold gale. Gale means storm. So we were feeling so tired. So we crawled into our tent, crawled into our sleeping bags, and we slept because we were so exhausted and the wind was blowing. It's a storm was blowing. John Hunt, Colonel John Hunt, who gave the crucifix to Tenzing, who led Hillary. John Hunt was the one who gave the crucifix to Hillary, and Hillary placed the crucifix along with Tenzing, who gave the eatables to the gods. Yes, John Hunt, who led the expedition, states that it was an unforgettable day. They had climbed to the top. They, who are they? Tenzing and Hillary. There were shouts of joys, handshakes, and hugs for the two heroes. Their happiness and pride showed how these men had shared in the achievement that was brilliantly concluded by Tenzing and Hillary. The adventure was over. So these two people, though they started their journey with 6, these two were the ones who were able to reach the summit. The first to reach the summit was Hillary along with Tenzing. The story of the ascent of Mount Everest is one of the comradeship and teamwork. Yes, it is, of course, teamwork. Comradeship is friendship and teamwork. It is a comrade. My comrade means my friend. It is teamwork which helped them to reach the summit, formed through dangers and difficulties, met and overcome together. See, whenever Hillary asked for something, Tenzing, what he would say? Just as you wish. Just as you wish. I hope you do remember the words. So whenever Hillary asked anything, just as you wish. So they had a very good understanding. Hillary and Tenzing, they had a very good understanding, comradeship. It's a teamwork. They were so supportive to each other that they were able to reach their destination. Yes, perhaps after the climbing of this great mountain, others will find their own Everest. For there are still many opportunities for adventure. Some are close at hand, others are far away in distant lands. See here, perhaps after the climbing of these great mountains, others will find their own Everest. Own Everest. Everest means it is not the peak they are talking about. There are so many difficult situations everyone will be coming across in our lives. For there are still many opportunities for adventure. Some are close at hand, others far away in distant land. Everyone, they are striving hard to reach something, to reach their goal, their ambition with fierce determination. So these are the very catchy words of Hillary. Not all adventures are exciting because many people, they started climbing to reach Mount Everest, but they were not able to do so. Not all adventures are exciting, nor is adventure to be found only upon a mountain. So mala ஏறது மட்டும்தான் adventure-ஆ? நிச்சயமா இல்லை. There are Everest to be climbed in our everyday life. ஒவ்வொரு நாளும் எவரெஸ்ட் மாதிரி ஒரு கஷ்டமான சிகரத்தை அடையிறதுக்காக ஒவ்வொரு நாள் வாழ்க்கை போராட்டமாக தான் இருக்குது. வாழ்க்கையே போர்க்களம் வாழ்ந்துதான் பார்க்கணும். போர்க்களம் மாறலாம், போர்களும் மாறுமா இல்லையா? அருமையான வரிகள். ஸோ இது இந்த இடத்துக்கு ரொம்ப நல்லா பொருந்தும். தெர் ஆர் எவரெஸ்ட் டு பி கிளைம்ட் இன் ஆர் எவ்ரிடே லைஃப். ஒவ்வொரு நாளும் நம்ம போராட்டத்தோட தான் கடக்கிறோம். இப்போ யோசித்து பாருங்க, இந்த கொரோனான்ற போராட்டத்தில் நம்ம எவ்வளோ கஷ்டப்பட்டு நம்ம கடந்துட்டு இருக்கோம். வி ஆர் நாட் ஷுர் வாட் வில் ஹேப்பன் டு அஸ், வாட் வில் ஹேப்பன் டு அவர் லைஃப். This minute I'm alive. I have to be thankful to God, for God has given me this minute to be alive. Yes, every day we are coming across so many Mount Everest. Given the selflessness and resolve which enabled men to climb Everest, there is no height, no depth that the spirit of man, guided by higher spirit, cannot attain. So it is not only by our own self determination, our own self willpower, our own confidence. We cannot do anything by of our own unless and until we are guided by a higher spirit. Higher spirit is God. Only by the guidance of God, only by God's protection, only by God's help, we can reach reach the highest, reach the Everest. Everest is not the peak. Here it is the hurdles, it is the struggles we come across in our day to day life. So Hilary wants to give us a moral from his journey, moral from the tough task of climbing and reaching the summit. And he says it is because of God's guidance that he along with Tenzing, the comradeship, the teamwork, along with the guidance of God, they were able to reach the highest summit, the summit. Yes, hope you do understand what we have learned. Thank you, children.